Elias Ward was not the kind of man anyone imagined, stepping into the great unknown. He was a biologist, thin as a reed, with pale hands that had always looked better around books and microscopes than weapons or armor. His voice carried softly in a world where louder men always drowned him out. On Earth, among the confident engineers and towering soldiers who filled the expedition roster, he looked like a mistaken accidental passenger strapped to the greatest voyage of humankind. In the barracks before launch, laughter followed him like a shadow. The soldiers flexed their arms, boasting about the battles they'd seen and the scars they carried. The engineers spoke in hard numbers and sharp voices, comparing the machines they had built. Elias, quiet, gentle, holding his small notebook of plant sketches, seemed out of place. One of the men leaned over, his grin sharp as a knife, and said, loudly for the others to hear, "You'll be the first one eaten, Ward. I give it a day before some alien worm snaps you in half." The barracks filled with cruel laughter. Elias didn't answer. He had learned long ago that answering only fed their fire. Instead, he lowered his eyes, writing a quiet note in the margin of his book. When the time came, he walked into the shuttle as though he were walking into an exam room, heart fast, stomach light, but face calm. The steel corridors hummed with energy as the engines built toward ignition. Strapped into his seat, he listened to the others cheer, boast, and pray. He alone sat still, hands folded, eyes half-closed, as the ship broke through atmosphere and drifted toward the violent blue sphere below. The commander's voice spoke of glory, Valora Prime, a world rich with resources and possibilities, but infamous for tearing apart every probe that touched its surface. Storms raged across its continents, lightning split the skies, and its beasts were the stuff of whispered reports. It was a place meant to kill the arrogant and test the strong. The shuttle cut into the atmosphere. Fire licked the windows, shaking the hull like a drum. Gravity clenched its fist around them. Soldiers grunted, as though invisible weights pressed into their chests. Their arms trembled against restraints, every breath forced through teeth. One man cursed loudly, gasping for air. An engineer shouted about the crushing pull, already sweating as if in fever. Elias felt it too. His bones ached, his chest strained, but not as much as theirs. The weight pressed him down, but in a strange way, it fit him. His thin frame, mocked for weakness, seemed made for this gravity, where the broad-shouldered men struggled against. The drag his body swayed into it, like a tree that bends with the wind instead of snapping. The shuttle slammed onto soil, the doors opened, and the first breath of Valora Prime poured in thick, sharp, tinged with toxins that burned the throat. The others coughed, spat, cursed, reaching for filters. Elias lifted his mask, but did not rush. He took one slow inhale. It was poison, yes, but not fatal, not immediately. In his mind, he was already breaking down its elements, remembering his studies, tasting its edge. When the ramp lowered, the ground trembled beneath their boots. Soldiers stumbled, heavy and awkward in the doubled gravity. One dropped his pack with a curse, another fell to his knee. Elias stepped down last. The air pressed against him, the weight pulled, and yet he moved with balance, his body, so unsuited. Two Earth's endless competitions of strength slipped into a strange harmony here. Each step felt more certain, not less. The others noticed. A few of them glared, confused. "Beginner's luck," one muttered, but Elias did not smile or boast. He only walked slowly across the strange, dark soil, his hand brushing over the leaves of a low plant that shimmered with a faint, dangerous glow. He knelt, opened his notebook, and began to sketch, steady, as though he had been born there, inside. His chest tightened not from fear, but from something he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, he wasn't out of place. What the world had called weakness might just be his survival. The storms of Valora were already building at the horizon. Lightning forked across black skies, promising trials to come. But for Elias, standing small among giants, there was no mockery in the air now. There was only silence, and the quiet truth pressing into him with the same weight as the gravity itself. Here, on this planet meant to kill, his story was just beginning. Elias Ward woke to the sound of thunder that seemed to roll through his bones. The first night on Valora Prime had been a blur of exhaustion, gasping air through the filters, and listening to the soldiers curse at every movement under the planet's crushing weight. He lay on his thin cot in the temporary camp, eyes tracing the fabric of the tent as shadows of lightning burned and faded across it. The storm outside had been raging for hours, winds strong enough to rattle steel crates, rain hitting the earth like hammer strikes. The others were restless. Voices carried through the camp. Men muttered about pulling back, about how impossible this place was, about how no technology could tame storms like these. One voice laughed bitterly. "Let's see how long the twig survives this one." He didn't have to ask who they meant. He had been hearing versions of that sentence his whole life. By dawn, the storm had only deepened. Water pooled in black soil, glowing faintly where strange minerals shimmered. The commander ordered everyone out. "We are not here to cower," he barked. "We are here to conquer." Soldiers grumbled, but obeyed, strapping gear onto their backs. Elias pulled his smaller pack over one shoulder, his notebook tucked carefully. Inside they trudged into the wild. Lightning still cracked above them, forked bolts, splitting the sky. Trees with armor-thick bark groaned in the wind, bending but never breaking. The gravity pressed down like a merciless hand. Men stumbled, knees buckling. Sweat ran down faces in constant streams, and then the ground shifted. Elias felt it first, the faint vibration, the way the soil quivered like something alive underneath. He froze, staring at the earth. "Stop," he said softly. No one listened. They were too busy groaning under the weight of their packs. The vibration surged. Suddenly, the soil cracked open like glass. From the dark pit surged creatures with bodies like armored serpents, eyes burning with yellow fire. Their hiss was like knives scraping steel. Panic erupted. Soldiers raised rifles, firing blindly into the storm of scaled bodies. Screams filled the air. One man was pulled into the pit with a single snap of jaws. Another fell backward, his weapon torn from his hand. Elias's heart pounded, but not with fear alone, with clarity. He remembered studies of parasitic colonies on Earth, organisms that lived beneath soil, responding to vibrations above. This was the same. "Stop moving," he shouted. His voice was drowned in chaos. A soldier shoved him aside, firing wildly. A serpent lunged, its fangs aimed for his chest. Instinct took over. Elias dropped to his knees, pressed his palm against the soil, and stayed utterly still. The beast paused, confused. Its head swayed, waiting for vibration. Elias's breath slowed, shallow, barely there. The serpent slid past him, striking instead at the soldier who thrashed in terror. In that moment, he understood. Movement fed them, panic fed them. Stillness was survival. Lightning flashed, throwing the world into silver. Elias rose slowly, carefully, motioning with both hands. "Be still," he cried again. This time, one engineer noticed their terror locking them into immobility. A serpent slithered past her, untouched. Another soldier, gasping, tried to run, and was torn apart before their eyes. Piece by piece, the survivors stilled, trembling. Teeth clenched as the serpents hissed and circled. Elias's quiet command spread like fire. Within minutes, the creatures, confused, sank back into the soil, vanishing into the earth as though they had never existed. The field fell silent, except for the storm. The commander's face was pale, his eyes locked on Elias. Soldiers looked at him differently, now confused, unsettled. The same man they had called weak, the one they swore would be eaten first, had stood untouched among the monsters. But there was no time for triumph. The storm swelled again, tearing trees free, sending black rain in sheets. Thunder shook the horizon until it felt like the world itself might split. The commander barked for retreat to higher ground. In the scramble, a bolt of lightning struck a tree behind Elias, blasting him backward into the mud. His pack tore free, his notebook sliding away in the current of rainwater. He scrambled to his feet, reaching for it, when another tremor ran through the earth. Heavier this time, deeper. The serpents were returning, or something larger, and then, through the rain, he saw them, figures tall and dark, moving with grace where the storm seemed to part around them, not human. Their bodies shimmered faintly. In the lightning, armor and skin interwoven like one. Hunters, their eyes glowed faintly blue, and in their hands were long, curved blades that cut through the storm as if it parted for them. Elias froze, breath caught. These were not the beasts. These were thinking, watching, waiting. And their attention was fixed, not on the soldiers or the commander, but on him. While the humans stumbled and cursed, these towering beings tilted their heads, their gaze narrowing as though they had found something unexpected. One of them raised her weapon, not in attack, but in silent signal. The storm howled louder. The soil trembled, and Elias Ward, the man mocked as weakest on earth, realized he had just stepped into a different story, one where he was no longer invisible. The storm eased only enough to show what the lightning had hidden. Tall figures emerged through the sheets of black rain, their presence so deliberate that even the serpents beneath the soil seemed to retreat. The humans gasped. Rifles were raised. But the commander hesitated. These were not wild beasts. They walked with purpose. Elias could not look away from the one in front. She stood taller than any human soldier, her shoulders wrapped in dark hide, her weapon curved like a fang carved from bone and metal. Her eyes glowed faintly in the storm's light, an icy blue that cut through the haze. Her gaze passed over the soldiers as if they were insects. And then it settled on him. The soldiers muttered nervously. One raised his rifle higher. Targets. Sir. Say the word. The commander hesitated. Thunder rolled above. Before he could answer, the tall huntress moved. In a single fluid step, she was among them, faster than their eyes could follow. Her blade sliced the barrel off the rifle before the man could fire. Sparks hissed in the rain. The soldier stumbled back, terrified. No one dared move. The huntress tilted her head toward Elias, speaking in a language sharp and guttural. Her voice was deep, but there was something strange about the way she lingered on her words, as though she was not merely commanding but questioning. None of the humans understood. The commander barked for formation. Soldiers staggered into position, but under Valora's crushing gravity, they moved like clumsy children compared to her fluid grace. She ignored their weapons. Her eyes locked on Elias. He felt exposed, as if the storm itself had peeled away his skin and left nothing hidden. His heart pounded, yet he held her gaze. He couldn't explain why, perhaps instinct, perhaps defiance, but he did not look away. Slowly, she lowered her weapon, gesturing at him. A command. An invitation. The commander cursed, shouting, "Do not move. Ward, stay where you are." But Elias felt something in her stance. This was not random. She had chosen him. The way she looked at him was not as prey, but as puzzle. When he took one careful step toward her, the soldiers erupted in protest. He's surrendering. He's mad. But none dared follow. The ground trembled again this time, heavier, deeper, as if the planet itself were warning them. The serpents stirred below, restless. The huntress lifted her head, scanning the horizon. Her people, more figures now visible, shifted into formation with practiced ease, and then the soil split again. From the earth erupted a creature larger than the serpents, its body plated in black chitin, its jaws wide enough to swallow a man. Whole soldiers screamed and fired in panic. The huntress snarled, barking orders in her language. Her hunters leaped into action, moving with terrifying precision. Bullets sparked harmlessly against the beast's armor. Soldiers stumbled, unable to match the speed of the storm or the creature. The commander shouted, trying to pull his men together, but chaos reigned. Elias' single quotes, his instincts, screamed at him. He had studied predators, parasites, survival patterns. This beast was not random. It was drawn by vibration, by sound, by movement, just like the smaller ones. And now the humans were feeding it with every frantic shout and gunshot. He shouted above the storm, his voice cracking but loud, "Stop firing. You're feeding it." No one listened. Panic drowned, reasoned the huntress. Though she turned, her glowing eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Elias thought he saw recognition, understanding. With a roar, the beast lunged at a soldier, tearing through armor like paper. Blood spilled across the soil. Another man fell, screaming. Elias's body moved before his mind could argue. He sprinted, faster than he should have been able under the gravity, leaping toward the soldier's fallen pack. Inside, a beacon device pulsed faint light, a vibration emitter. He yanked it free, slammed it against the ground, and twisted the dial. The emitter screamed with sound, too high for human ears, but perfect for the beast. Its head snapped around, jaws dripping. It lunged, not at men, but at the pulsing beacon. Elias ran, dragging the device away from the camp, luring the monster after him. Every step should have broken him. Every breath should have collapsed his chest. But somehow, Valora's gravity carried him differently. His frail body flowing with a rhythm the soldiers had never mastered. Behind him the huntress watched. He could feel her eyes on him even as lightning lit his path. The beast crashed after him, tearing the earth apart. Elias's lungs burned, his arms shook. At the edge of a ravine, he hurled the beacon into the chasm. The beast lunged after it, jaws wide, and plummeted into the depths. The ground shook as it vanished. Silence followed. Only rain. Elias collapsed onto his knees, gasping. The humans stared in shock. No one spoke. The commander's face was pale. His jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed disbelief. The man they mocked, the man they said would be eaten first, had just saved them all. The huntress strode forward, her blade sheathed, and stopped before him. Her glowing eyes studied him for a long, unbearable moment. Then, in the silence, she said one word in broken human tongue, "Strong." The word struck deeper than any blade. Elias looked up at her, soaked, trembling, his heart pounding. She stood like a shadow carved from stormlight, terrible and beautiful, and for reasons he could not name. He knew this was not the end of their encounter. It was the beginning. The camp burned with whispers long after the storm faded. Soldiers sat hunched around flickering lamps, faces pale, voices low. They replayed the fight again and again, how the beast rose from the soil, how bullets failed, how Elias Ward of all people had dragged it into the ravine. No one could explain it. Some called it luck, others muttered the word curse. One dared speak the truth aloud, that the weakest man among them had done what their strongest could not. The commander avoided his gaze, shame mixed with suspicion in the man's eyes. The soldiers looked at Elias differently now, some with unease, some with resentment, a few with awe they would never admit. But Elias barely noticed them. His thoughts replayed the word that had been spoken in the storm, in a voice not human. Strong. The alien huntress had said it. The memory of her towering frame, rain sliding off her armor, the fire in her blue eyes, it clung to him like heat that refused to leave. Morning came heavy with fog. The commander ordered the team deeper, into the valley, toward resources they were meant to catalog. But every path was shadowed by the hunters. They did not attack, only followed, silhouettes among the rocks, glowing eyes in the distance, and always, at their front, was her. The soldiers grew restless. "We're being stalked," one spat. "They're waiting for us to collapse." But Elias noticed something different. When a predator prowled near, it was the hunters who struck first, driving it back. When the serpents stirred beneath the soil, the hunters' steps silenced them. They were not enemies. They were watching that night. The fog thickened, hiding stars and swallowing sound. Elias lay awake, heart restless. Then he heard a shift of air, a scrape of stone. He sat up. She was there. The huntress stood just beyond the lamplight, her blade sheathed, her gaze fixed on him. She raised one hand, motioning for him to follow. Fear rooted him at first. Leaving camp meant risk, meant punishment if discovered. But something stronger pulled him from his cot. Quietly, he slipped between sleeping soldiers and into the fog. She moved like a shadow, and he followed deeper into the valley until the campfire glow was gone. Only the hush of fog and the distant growl of storms remained. They reached a hollow beneath a jagged cliff. There, she turned to him, eyes catching the faint glow of bioluminescent moss. For a long moment, silence stretched. Then she spoke, halting, broken human tongue, as though testing words she had stolen from listening. "You, not weak." The sound of her voice struck him harder than thunder. He swallowed, unsure if his own voice would carry. "You saved me too," he said softly. Her head tilted. "Others break. You bend. Earth, small man. Live." Her hand pressed against her chest, then toward him, as if weighing meaning. He understood fragments. She had watched. She had seen him survive, where the others stumbled. "My name is Elias," he whispered. Pressing his hand to his chest, she studied the gesture, then echoed it. "Kaelira." The name fit her, like stormlight, sharp, unyielding, fierce. Suddenly, the ground shuddered, cutting their fragile connection. From the mist, shapes moved, predators, drawn by the sound of their voices. Hulking beasts with jaws that glowed faint green, their breath hissing poison. Kaelira's blade was in her hand in an instant. Elias knew he was no warrior, yet his mind spun. He spotted the moss, glowing because of the minerals it fed on. Poison neutralizer. He tore handfuls, grinding them between his palms, smearing the juice across a rock. When the beast lunged, he hurled it aside. The creature sniffed, recoiled, snarled. The moss burned against its glow. Kaelira's eyes flicked to him surprise, then something deeper. Together they moved, her blade striking with deadly grace, his hands scattering moss, driving beasts into confusion. Storm and silence. Steel and science, woven into one. When the last beast fell, silence returned. Rain began again, gentle this time. They stood breathless, inches apart, her eyes locked on his. This time, there was no mockery in her gaze, no test, only respect. Something softer hovered at its edge, though she would not name it. She stepped closer, her breath warm in the cold night. "Strong," she said again, firmer now, as if sealing the word into him. Elias's heart hammered. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the realization that she saw him in a way no one ever had. Not as fragile, not as expendable, not as weak. The fog swirled around them, hiding the world. In that hidden hollow, for the first time in his life, Elias Ward did not feel out of place. He felt chosen. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm Elias had never known. The soldiers trudged through the valley, cursing the gravity, coughing against the toxic mist, stumbling at every turn. They looked at him differently now, half suspicion, half disbelief. But no one dared laugh anymore. After the ravine, after the night of beasts, Elias had become something else in their eyes. And always, above them, beyond them, shadowing them, moved Kaelira and her hunters. Their presence was no longer threat, but inevitability. The soldiers hated it. The commander called them parasites, waiting to strike. But Elias saw it differently. When storms surged, the hunters were already bracing. When predators stirred, Their spears sang before anyone else could move. And sometimes, when the camp settled, when the fog closed, and kaelira found him, always without words, always with the same unshakable gaze. On the fifth night, the valley shook again. Not serpents this time, something larger. The earth itself seemed to breathe. Fissures opened. Black smoke poured out, glowing with faint red. Fire. Soldiers scrambled in panic. One fell into a split in the earth, screaming. The commander ordered ropes, shouted until his voice broke. But nothing could hold against what rose from the crack. A beast unlike any they had seen, its body armored, in jagged stone, molten veins running across its hide, eyes burning with volcanic light. Its roar was not sound but force, a shockwave that ripped the tents from their stakes and sent men flying. Rifles fired, bullets cracked uselessly. The beast did not bleed, it only grew angrier. Elias felt terror slam through him, but behind it, knowledge. His mind spun through memory, through Earth's creatures that mirrored this, extremophiles that lived in heat, parasites thriving in magma vents, stone crabs on volcanic shores. This beast was not invincible, it was alive, and everything alive had a weakness. Kaelira leaped into the fray, her blade flashing, her hunters striking with spears tipped in glowing crystal. But even their ferocity faltered. One hunter was crushed beneath a sweep of its tail. Another thrown like a doll into the rocks. Elias grabbed his notebook, flipping to a page he had sketched of the glowing moss. Neutralizer. He sprinted to the fissure, tearing moss free, grinding it until the juice stung his palms. The soldiers screamed at him, thinking he had lost his mind. But he saw the glowing lines across the beast's body, cracks where molten blood steamed. Not armor, but wounds. Vents. He hurled the moss paste into the cracks. The beast roared, staggering. Smoke hissed from its veins as the reaction took hold. There, he shouted, voice hoarse. Its fire feeds on air. Close the vents. Kaelira understood before anyone else. She roared to her hunters in their tongue, and they struck as one, spears piercing the glowing lines, driving the moss deeper. Elias ran with them, weak human body, in the middle of giants, shoving fistfuls of paste into every wound he could reach. Fire seared his arms, pain tearing across his skin, but he did not stop. The beast thrashed, earth shattering beneath it. Soldiers scattered, useless, but Elias clung to the cracks, smearing moss until his body shook. Finally, with a sound like a mountain breaking, the beast collapsed. Its fire dimmed, its body steaming as smoke poured from sealed vents. The valley fell silent again. Elias collapsed onto the ground, chest heaving. Kaelira stood above him, her face streaked with ash, her glowing eyes locked on him. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered her blade and knelt beside him, before the soldiers. Before her hunters, she placed one hand against his chest. "Not weak," she said in her rough human tongue. Then, more softly, almost a whisper only he could hear, "My strength." The words burned deeper than the beast's fire. The soldiers stared, unable to speak. Her hunters bowed their heads. For the first time, Elias Ward was no longer a shadow among giants. He was the center. The fragile biologist they mocked was now the one they leaned on to survive. And as Kaelira's hand lingered, as her gaze softened with something that shook him more than any beast, Elias felt the truth press into him like the gravity itself. What Earth had called weakness, Valora was beginning to worship as strength. The smoke from the fallen beast lingered in the valley for days, staining the air with the stench of molten ash and burned moss. The soldiers refused to speak of what they had seen, but silence was worse than mockery. Their eyes followed Elias wherever he went. Suspicion, fear, envy, and unspoken recognition that the man they had once mocked had done what their rifles and armor could not. But among Kaelira's hunters, whispers carried differently. When they passed him, their hands brushed their chests. in a sign of respect. Around the fire, he heard them murmur in their sharp language. One word repeated, always paired with a glance at him. He did not know the meaning, but the reverence in their tone was unmistakable. The commander's patience thinned with each passing hour. At dawn, he called Elias before the unit. His voice was flat, but anger burned beneath it. Whatever trick you've stumbled into, Ward, it ends here. You're a scientist, nothing more. You answer to me, not to these creatures. We leave this valley tomorrow. Elias opened his mouth, but before he could speak, a shadow fell across them. Kaelira had entered the camp without a sound. Every soldier stiffened, rifles half raised. She ignored them, striding forward until she stood a hand's breadth from Elias. Her gaze flicked to the commander, then back to him, and with a single word in her tongue, she cut the air. Stay. The soldiers recoiled, as if struck. The commander sputtered in outrage. You don't command my men. But Kaelira's eyes never left Elias. Her meaning was clear. She was not commanding them. She was choosing him. That night, the camp divided. Soldiers muttered that Ward was compromised, that he had bent to alien influence. Others, quieter but bolder, wondered aloud if perhaps he was the reason they still breathed. Elias could not sleep. Kaelira came again, stepping into the shadows where the lamplight could not reach. She did not summon him this time. She waited until he rose on his own. They walked beyond the cliffs into a hollow lit by glowing pools. Alien trees arched overhead, leaves shimmering like glass. For the first time, he saw her not as the warrior but as a woman of her world. The blue glow traced the scars along her arms, the subtle curve of her lips when she studied him. Why me? He whispered at last. Her head tilted, the way it always did when she searched for words in his tongue. Others, heavy, they break, you. She touched her own arm, then brushed his shoulder gently, a contrast to the power in her frame. You change. Something cracked open in his chest. No one had ever said that to him, not on Earth, not in all the years of being overlooked. His entire life had been a litany of weakness, and here, in her voice, it had become the core of his strength. Their silence deepened, stretched taut between them like a bowstring. Her eyes softened. For the first time, her hand lingered on his shoulder. Heat spread through him, different from the fire of battle, but before the moment could break, the earth itself did. A tremor rippled through the ground, stronger than any before. From the cliffs above, a horn call echoed deep, resonant, filled with urgency. Kaelira stiffened, her face hardening. She barked a word to the hunters who appeared like shadows from the trees. They replied with hurried tones. Elias caught only fragments, but the meaning was clear. Something greater than beasts stirred. When they returned to camp, the commander was already shouting. A human patrol had gone missing. No bodies, no tracks, only weapons left behind, bent and shattered. Spoke quickly in her tongue, then turned to Elias. Not beast, not storm, hunters. His blood ran cold. Your people. She shook her head sharply. Not mine, others. Darkland, they take. The soldiers erupted. The commander's voice rose above them all. They've captured our men, and you. He pointed at Elias, fury and fear twisting his face. You're the reason they know where we are. You led them to us. Rifles aimed at him. Elias stood frozen, shock pounding in his veins. In that instant, he realized the truth. He belonged to neither side fully. To the soldiers, he was alien now. To Kaelira's people, he was untested. Kael. Ira moved faster than thought. Her blade flashed, slicing barrels clean from two rifles. Soldiers staggered back in terror. Her voice thundered in her tongue, and the hunters echoed her, ringing the humans with steel. The commander's hand shook near his holster. The camp was seconds from bloodshed. Elias stepped forward, voice breaking but firm. Stop, all of you. His body trembled under the weight of both armies' eyes. He knew what had to come, a choice. His heart pounded as he turned, first to the soldiers who had mocked him all his life, then to kaelira, whose eyes burned with a fire he had never deserved but desperately wanted. You said I bend, he whispered to her. Maybe this time I break, but I have to decide where. The silence that followed was heavier than the gravity itself. Asterisk. The valley did not sleep that night. Rifles and alien blades gleamed in the same firelight. The soldiers and hunters circling each other like wolves forced into the same cage. The commander's fury burned through every order, his pride unable to accept that the weakest man under his command had become the one both sides looked to. Kaelira stood tall, her hunters at her back, her hand never straying far from her blade. And in the center, between two worlds, was Elias Ward. The tremors returned before dawn. The ground cracked, smoke curling upward in spirals. The hunters murmured darkly, their eyes flashing fear for the first time. Kaelira explained in broken human tongue, her voice hard as stone. Old One wakes. Elias felt the weight in those words. This was no serpent, no volcanic beast. Something ancient had stirred, a predator that even her kind called myth. The commander seized the moment. This is our chance. We signal orbit. We burn this cursed valley to ash. Elias shook his head. You'll only feed it. Everything. We've done guns, bullets, fire they don't kill, they call. You'll bring it straight to us. The commander's hand hovered near the Cum's unit, torn between rage and fear. Then the earth split open, and all argument vanished. The creature that rose-dwarfed mountains, its body shimmered with plates of obsidian, its wings unfolding like torn sails of black glass. Each movement shattered stone. Its roar cracked the sky, silencing all human and alien alike. The soldiers fired anyway, panic taking them. The beast answered with a single sweep of its wing, a shockwave that sent men tumbling like leaves. Elias staggered, his lungs burning from the poison-laced wind. His notebook tumbled from his pack, pages flapping open to sketches of moss, venom, fissures. His entire life of quiet notes and overlooked studies stared back at him, and suddenly, he saw it, the pattern that had been forming across every encounter. Valora did not test strength with force. It tested balance, harmony. Break the balance, and the world destroyed you. Align with it, and it gave you power. He scrambled to kaelira's side. It breathed through the cracks, he gasped, pointing at the glowing seams across its chest. Like the fire beast, it feeds on air, on storm. We cut the flow, we starve it. She understood instantly. Her hunters rallied to her call, but it was not enough. The beast was too vast, too armored. Elias' single quote's eyes fell on the commander's Cum's pack, its emitter glowing faintly. The same vibration tech that had lured the serpents. His heart pounded. He knew what had to be done. He sprinted for the pack, grabbing the emitter. The commander cursed, lunging to stop him, but kaelira blocked the path. Her blade at the man's throat. Elias turned the dial higher than it had ever been set. The device screamed into the air, inaudible to human ears, but enough to make the beast's head snap downward, eyes blazing with volcanic fury. Come for me, Elias whispered, legs already moving. He ran into the fissure fields, the beast crashing after him. Every step, a quake. Rocks shattered, storms howled, the sky itself seemed to tear apart. But Elias ran, body frail on earth, yet flowing here with perfect rhythm. The emitter's shriek dragged the monster closer, until its jaws filled the sky. Kaelira and her hunters swarmed its flanks, spears driving into vents as Elias had shown them, moss paste burning its veins. But the final blow depended on him. At the edge of the deepest ravine, Elias turned. Lightning lit the world in silver. He raised the emitter high, every muscle trembling under the gravity, every breath tearing his chest. And then he hurled it into the abyss. The beast lunged after the sound. its massive body tipped forward, momentum carrying it into the chasm. Its roar echoed like the death of a world, then faded into silence. Elias collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, vision blurred. When the dust cleared, Kaelira was there, striding toward him. She dropped to her knees, pulling him into her arms, her face fierce with something he had never seen from her before, fear of losing him. Her voice was low, unsteady. "You strongest." The words trembled through him, sealing into his very bones. Around them, her hunters bowed, voices rising with one name, Siltaran. Later, he would learn its meaning: stone that bends but never breaks. The soldiers stood silent, their rifles lowered, their pride shattered. Even the commander could not deny what the world itself had shown. The weakest man of Earth had become the shield of Valora. Kaelira's hand lingered against his chest, her eyes locked to his. In that gaze, he saw something beyond respect, beyond alliance, something fragile, dangerous, and undeniable. And then came the final shock. As her people examined him, as they tested his wounds, they revealed what his body had already begun to show. His blood had changed, his lungs had adapted, his very bones were denser, aligned to Valora's pull. What had been frailty on Earth was becoming strength here. Earth had mocked him for his weakness. Valora had claimed him for his strength. Elias, Ward, the man no one expected to survive, had become the strongest on her world and in Kaelira's arms. With the storm parting above them, he finally understood. He had never been out of place. He had simply been waiting for the right world to belong to.